Hello, ladies and gentlemen. First, I'd like to express a thank you for the 1.1 million views I received on YouTube for my Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask video that was only made of images and sound and one single sound, which was the 5.5 minutes of the moon ringing and the ground shaking with the ambience and everything in the background featured in the video. And I put a sound in the description so people can download it. When I first started this YouTube channel 8 years ago, the only thing I've aimed for and the only thing I've ever wanted, honestly, was to make a channel where I can post random shit that I really don't give a fuck about posting, honestly. But at the same time, I was working for a community called Warcraft Underground, and I'm not really sure if they're really in existence yet, but or still. And for them, I was taking their sounds, I was compiling them in videos, and I was using their links and posting those links on YouTube. But eventually, Warcraft Underground started to go down, and I felt sad at the extraction of all these artists, that they extracted these sounds for our community, for our people to use in various projects, that I decided, okay, well, if you're gonna take your site down and lose all these links, I'm gonna upload all of these links elsewhere, and I'm gonna put them on YouTube. So my whole video and whole YouTube was made to be in helping content for the community, honestly. And so now that my Majora's Mask video got 1.1 million views, I was thinking I'm going to post a new video with the Majora's Moon with new images and everything. But I found that I can't really do that because the old current video that currently exists, it's perfect as it is. And just making a new video, aka a remake of the original, it 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 would defeat and destroy the purpose of the old one, honestly. And I found it that most remakes of today are either high graphics, new images, new models, but no love for the story or no love for the thing that made it original, that made it perfect in the first place. For example, the Ocarina of Time was a wonderful, 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 wonderful game. And the whole story of going back and forth between the future and the past in order to face Ganondorf and the evil of and preventing to prevent trying to not make the Triforce explode into millions of pieces and the world enter a chaos and a realm of darkness and all these baddies taking over the world. I love that. I love that you could go back and forth in the future and the past, and that you could see the differences of what Ganondorf would be like to this world, how he would treat this world. And I believe that the Ocarina of Time had the best way of portraying to you how the villain could behave, how the villain is like. The villain, Ganondorf, obviously sees full destruction to the world, but it's not just the world he sees he wants to destroy, but it's also the people in the world that are responsible for most of this evil happening. For example, when you will go to the ranch, it was that evil rancher that looked at his little kid, looked at the little kid that was all grown up, and he abused the farm to the point that the horses and everything else there felt really unhappy. Link had to free his own horse, Epona, from an evil man. So it wasn't just Ganondorf that was the villain here, it was the people themselves in general. The carpenters of the past, they didn't finish the bridge until the world was basically all over. The castle and lied in ruin, the market with the people that were in there. It had so much detail and so much attention to the love of the world that it was unbelievable. But Majora's Mask, it was a continuation of the original, and they reused all the old models and sometimes even renamed the characters. But the way they did it, the way they set up the story, they set up the basis, it made it 10 times more powerful and 10 times more relating than to this new one compared to the original, which was Ocarina of Time. In Majora's Masks, you get 4 sections of the world, 4 sections. The Ikana Canyon, it was the Zora Cape, I believe. It was the swamp. And the last and final place was the mountain village, or simply the mountain. And in all 4 of them, you learn that the Gorons were doing Goron races. They were racing for gold dust. They had a hero called Darmani. Darmani died in Snowhead Temple after a huge snowstorm engulfed everything, even the Goron village, making hundreds of Gorons, if not more, separated from their homes and families. Their business, their market everything was slowed down. Life could not function normally. In the swamp, Aldalva cursed the waters. He made everything in the waters poisonous. The masked one brought fury and kidnapped princess, who we later on bring with a little bottle back home. And that's the thing too. The story was as much serious and dark that it even had a little comedy, like putting a little princess in the bottle. And for a little kid, when you enter the world and find out these stories like Combe and Kontake, the two little witches at the swamp who you help as well. And the more you help, the more you progress. The game always feels so rewarding, but the thing that keeps you the most is the story. When you first start, you start with Link, and you yourself, when you were young back then, when Nintendo first came out, when you caught the console, you were so fucking excited. You liked it because you were a kid. You were Link. You could relate. You can fit in Link's shoes and absolutely take this world for what it was. It was a huge, giant world. I first started playing The Legend of Zelda when I was about 10 and 12, honestly. And now I'm like 25. And so I gotta say that it was really exciting for me to play the Legend of Zelda series, to this day, it's one of my favorite games. The Breath of the Wild cannot beat it. The Twilight Princess cannot beat it. Nothing can beat it. I think that games will no longer capture the emotion, the love, the passion as it did in the past. And Majora's Mask is a perfect example of this. Majora's Mask combines everything: people's evil, people's fears, people's love for one another. And that's what really makes the world come around, and that's what really shows you what people really are like. And it does. And the thing is, you have a 3-day cycle. And in Ocarina of Time, you did not really have a cycle. You had people change, and things change over time in those cycle. Like when you went into the future, things changed, and everything in the past, in the future, was different, and the people were different. Some places were unaccessible, and some places were just overall destroyed. And you can see a reflection through time. You can see things change through time. There was also mysteries, like the kid in Kakariko Village. You wondered, did that kid grow up to be a psychopath, or that witch potion seller that locks himself in the house? What's up with that kid? Where did that kid go? But you don't know, and it's also funny because of all these areas in the future that you kind of find out later, and that are in the past, that you return to, like the well. The well was one of the most frightening and disturbing appearances. But back then, also, you see, like today, people today are like, oh my God, racism! Oh my God, this is too dark. You must remove it. The kids cannot see it. But back then, people were creative. They had more things to be creative, and they were more open-minded. As to today, more things that you want to do like that cost you more money. And at the same time, the creativity is taxed so much that you can't really create a perfect video game as you did back then. That's what I believe. However, at the same time, I believe that if they, kind of stuck less on graphics, and they went more on the story, that they could get more money than they would than investing graphics on it. Maybe I'm wrong with that, but I really hope that they go back to the story, because honestly, the graphics lately are too cringy or they suck. I don't know, they suck. I guess I was raised in the Nintendo time with the old graphics were better, and that's why I really love Majora's Mask. That's why I really like the setting it was in. That's why I really like where everything was coming together in a story, in a big puzzle piece. When you start as Link, you start in the clock tower. And when you start as Link, you meet you meet the Skull Kid, who's possessed by Majora's Mask. And you realize he's a kid just like you, and he's possessed just like you. And later on, you go in and you think this game's all serious. You can get a knife and you can get a sword and you're going to fight this evil Skull Kid inside Clock Town. But instead, you're playing a friendly game of hide and seek with the bombers, and you're bursting bubbles like a kid would in his youth, right? And you're being a little troublemaker. You're finding these kids, and the story did not have to explain much. It just had to show you. As compared to today, where everybody in the fucking world has to show you, everybody in the world has to dictate how things have to be. In the past, they didn't really do that. They showed you the world. And that's what I appreciate the most. They didn't look for accuracy. They didn't, comment about every fucking little detail of anything you did. It was basically, you went there, you did it. Congrats, bro. You're progressing through the story. And when you go to the astral observatory, when you see the moon and when you see the moon tears fall, you're like, holy fuck. And you're looking at the clock, you're like, oh shit, bro, I got like 3 days left. This thing's gonna fall down. Fuck, I'm doomed. Well, you didn't say fuck back then, because if you did, you got a 5 across your eyes. But you know what I'm saying. And if you didn't get a 5 across your eyes, you sure are gonna get it fucking now if you swear as a little kid like that. I hope. And if not, your parents need help. But then again, you see, back then, things were also different. I went kind of off topic there. But anyway, you return to the Majora's Mask Tower, to the clock tower, after the 3-day cycle, and you're there to face Skull Kid possessed by Majora. And you're facing fucking Skull Kid, and he's right up there. He's with his arms, and he's floating in the air, and he's laughing at you, and you're like, you laughing at me, bro? And you beat him up with the bubble. It's the only way you know how. But if first time I came there as a kid, I had no energy. And I had no way to reload my energy. So I was really glad that they left actually a little pot over there where I can actually break it and I can actually get energy. And it reminded me a lot of Banjo-Kazooie 2. Banjo-Kazooie 2 also realized and figured that sometimes when you're playing this game, you need some helpful guides, especially if you're a little kid. They made the games back then more kid-friendly to all audiences, and they also made it adult-friendly to all audiences. So if you were a kid, you could still pass this game. And if you were an adult, you can still pass this game. While today, it's either too gory or it's too unbalanced on one side that kids and adults can't really enjoy it the same way they used to. And a game didn't obsessively last your whole entire life to finish. There was a beginning, but there was also an end that was coming eventually. And I think they had the brilliant way of making this game by, if you reset the 3-day cycle, good. Just shut down the game and come back later. And you can finish it whenever you want. Well, games of today, good luck ever finding a fucking end, or good luck finding a save point. In Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, at least you could play your ocarina and reset the time and then fucking put the Nintendo joystick down and say, oh, fuck, thank God. I need a break, As in today, no, that's not going to happen anywhere, not even in Breath of the Wild. And some people say, oh yeah, well, I can still find a break. I can still shut down a game whenever I want. Yeah, but when you play the 3-day cycle and when you completed something in the 3.5-day cycle, it was like the game was dictating you its own time, when to start and when to finish. But it wasn't dictating it for too long. It was dictating it just enough for you to finish whatever you could finish in 3 days. When you were in the swamp, when you found out that the Deku Princess was kidnapped and the monkey might have been responsible, but the monkey has to speak to you, want to speak to the monkey, and you discover the song, the whole temple comes out. It's just the setting, the environment, the area where the Mask of Truth was. Everything was far more interesting than Ocarina of Time. And every time you heal this area, you would feel rewarded, and you would also feel how this place looks so much nicer that you cleaned it. But let's just say I finished the Woodfall Temple at the dawn of the end of the first day. I was pissed because I realized that there's games unlocked now. I realized that the witch has something new to offer me. I realized I could get the pig mask. I forgot what the hell it was called. But, 3 things I could have already received. I could have gone to the Deku Palace and seen the cinematic, which I've seen, of course. But And I got the Brewman mask. I don't know, was it the Brewman mask? I'm not. No, I think the Brewman mask was the eagle one. But anyway, I totally realized that I could do more content after I heal a specific place. So when I had to reset the 3 day cycle and go back to the Woodfall Temple, I thought, oh my god, now I have to do the whole temple again and face the doll. Oh god. And then all of a sudden, what happened? The temple unlocked, I had the mask, and I could immediately skip to the last boss and heal everything. And I was like, oh, thank you, Lord. And this game just give you rewards after rewards. And at the same time as you suffered, it was rewarding that suffering with more rewards, more than you lost or the more you had to do. You were getting more rewards. Then we got to the mountain village, and you could only unlock that area with an arrow, shooting the ice on the top, and boom. And every arrow and every weapon was important. And the more you progressed through the game, the progression was important for you to actually progress through the game to unlock these areas. While today, go there, go there, go there, go there, go everywhere. Progress how you see fit. Well, I didn't really like that. I really like that the old games were like, we can go and you can progress, and the more you progress, the more we're going to reward you with progressing through other areas until you eventually reach the starting point. When you get to Mountain Village, you learn the ghost of Darmani. You learned how he died. He was facing the evil of Snowhead Temple, which again is the evil of Majora. You're kind of feeling sorry for all these people that are suffering under Majora, because the swamp was a nice tourist attraction and an area to go fishing with your boat and everything until Majora came. You go to Snow Mountain, and you realize that literally that he caused the death of Darmani by turning everything snowy and made the Gorons flee in his village, stopped the market, stopped the racing, stopped the production of gold dust. And when you liberate the village, when you finally go up and face Goth, when you bring the child home, when you learn the Goron lullaby, when you put the big Goron to sleep, and it's beautiful to see that all these places that you're learning more about the culture of the Deku Scrubs. You're learning more about the culture of the Gorons. And they've introduced such wonderful, wonderful races and such wonderful, wonderful characters. Even when you dump that big Goron food to that guy up with the frog mask and he ate it, and then he gave you the mask in return, it was just a lovely way of introducing everything. And I think the Majora's Mask, the most thing they had, they captured the best with Majora's Mask was the races. In Ocarina of Time, yeah, they were rolling down the hill, sure, they were selling bombs and they had markets, but they didn't really pick up bombs and throw it, or they didn't really show you that they, own bombs and, were still obsessively selling them. No, they didn't really show you. No. But the Gorons in Majora's Mask, they had a culture, they had a song, they had a village, they had a culture, they had their own place where they buried their dead, they had a great hero called Darmani. They showed you the Gorons weren't just useless fat asses, and now Darunia in Ocarina of Time, okay, he was one of the sages, but you didn't really see him do much. You didn't see Darmani doing much, but when you see that scar over his chest, the way bottom where his belly was, when you hear his story, what he went through, when he wanted you to heal his sorrows, you generally feel sorry for this guy and realize that his whole village, he's been wanting his whole village healed. And he wanted to save his whole village. And once again, when you defeat Goth, when you put everything back to normal, when you got the Goron mask, when the mountain village heals, you still got these tasks. And the thing I hated about the mountain village was these frogs were fucking everywhere. They were in the dungeons, right? They were in these temples. They were at the swamp. One frog was in Clocktown. And fucking hell, you thought, okay, this is going to be like the swamp. I'll be able to solve everything in the swamp at no time, and I'll be able to, bring the frogs back, like in Mountain Village, because I completed it, and they're in this area just like they were in the swamp. In the swamp, you could still finish everything without the help of the bunny mask, of the bunny ears that make you go faster as Link. You could still finish that Deku Link challenge easy. I did that, but some people didn't. Some people just preferred to get the bunny ears. But anyway, I went through the entire fucking game hoping that eventually when I finish this everything, that I'm gonna feel good about myself. And I honestly did. I honestly liked everything. I liked the lens of truth. I liked when you hop those platforms. Everything in the game had its own way of introducing you to the Legend of Zelda universe, which I believe that no game of the Legend of Zelda series has ever been able to capture as detailed and as emotional. The emotional is the key word here, because Goron Village and Mountain Village, these frogs, they want to do is sing. They want to do the chore, and they want to reunite. But they don't. I don't think really that they were oblivious about the world of ending. Honestly, I don't even think they noticed the big giant moon in the sky, that they cared about the giant big moon in the sky as much, and that they only wanted to do their singing as frogs do. They all have a short lifespan. It's we humans that fear the death of the moon falling down and killing us all. And so when you get to the Zora Cape, when you see the two beavers, you can totally relate, because beavers build dams, out of trees and stuff. You can go underwater, you can see the Zoras, their own cape. Again, you're introduced to their own culture. You're introduced that they're band members, and this brings something cool to every race. Each race represents something. And the Zora band members were band members. They were playing music, and Lulu had a beautiful voice, and she does. She's still one of the hottest Zoras to this day. I don't care who the fuck says anything. That princess in fucking Ocarina of Time is pale in comparison to her. And then you go underwater to discover these ancient ruins, the fishes, the Great Bay Temple that is throwing the Gerudo pirates away. The Gerudo pirates come back in this one. The Gerudo people come back in this one as you expect. More fanatical, more evil, more women-like. And I didn't like the Gerudo in Breath of the Wild. I mean, I get you updated their model and everything to look better, but I always think that the Gerudo and the Majora's Mask, those ones were the best. Like, those ones were so badass. Like, fucking every time you fought them in their secret rooms, God. But what always confused me was, how can you not see someone with a stone mask on their face walking right beside you? I mean, you turn around facing the stone guy, but you're like, how do you not see me, bro? Like, I understand we didn't see that soldier until we used the lens of truth, but I'm like, is that what the guards really see? Myself being invisible? Because sometimes when I went to the other areas, when I was supposed to be invisible, I just got taken and thrown out of the window. So I never understood that as a kid, but I kind of found funny that the pirates who saw me, kept staring at me, and I was like right in front of them, and I'm like, what's up, bro? And I just slash them with the knife and they fall down. I thought that was one of the funniest and most hilarious things. But again, I only got that from Ikana Canyon. My first time I was there, I had to sneak through the guards. And the thing was, I went to Romani Ranch after I get the powder keg. So I actually went to and through the powder keg when I reset my 3-day cycle, and I figured out there's a whole new story at the ranch now too. And so I wasted a 3-day cycle there trying to see what everything I can do at Romani's Ranch before I proceed through the Zora domain area and the Great Bay Coast. That's it, Great Bay Coast. And when I went to Great Bay Coast, with the Stowe Mask later and the same pirate fortress later, I realized, holy fuck, the Stowe Mask can actually provide me with a way of sneaking past the guards. And I was like, oh, okay, so everything's connected. You get Epona from Romani Ranch. With Epona, you go through the valley's gates, but you don't know that. You don't. There's no guide. There was no guide back then. There was no place you can easily research. And that's what I hear about today, too. There's always guides for everything. Fuck you, guides. But anyway, you go across the fence with the horse and you go to this soldier and you don't even know it's there, but you see this huge round set of stones, which is usually how you would figure out if something was invisible there or if something was bound to happen there at a specific time of day. I used the lens of truth, and where there was a soldier. I gave him his drink, which either was a red potion, blue potion, green potion, and milk. But I gave him one time my most expensive milk, Romani milk, the most Romani Chatao milk, I think, the one that gives you infinite energy, the one that usually costs $100 to $200. I gave him that milk, and he was like, "Yeah, okay, bro," and he gave me the mask. I was like, "Yay!" And when you go to Ikana Canyon after you defeat the Great Pei Temple, after you defeat the pirates, after you get the songs back, after you learn that these babies form a song together, that they're only bound to their mother, and that this song is the way to open the temple. That's the sweetest thing. That every song that you learn, whether it was the Sonata of Awakening, the Goron Lullaby, I forgot the Zelda one, the Zora one. I'm sorry, but basically every musical instrument you learned was a way to access your new area. That was often a temple where you would face these bosses. And that was kind of an original, but at the same time, it wasn't an original, in a sense. Like, your first temple in the original was the Great Deku Tree. But you didn't really have a first temple at the beginning of Majora's Mask. You just had the Clock Tower, an easier way to get to be known to the game, because you were introduced to the Deku Scrub. You were not introduced to Link's fighting style. And that's the thing I liked. You always had a way of being introduced to these characters slowly. Most games now, they're like, oh, we already think you know what to do. Here you go, bro. Take a bow and arrow shoot. I just don't see the same thing. And so they give you guides in most of these games, sure, but yeah, at the same time, I like those guys to take it slow rather than immediately throwing you into the progression. And that's what I think Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask did the best. But the best thing that they did ever was all the stories, all the characters you could relate to. When you visit the man in the Great Bay Coast House, he's waiting there for the dawn of the final day until the end of the day, seeking shelter, afraid. We could all relate. We would all be afraid of the dawn of the final day came. And who's afraid of COVID? You should fucking kill yourself. I'm not really afraid of COVID. I think that's the most dumbest thing in the world that we should be afraid of. We had worse things to be afraid of back in the day. But this guy being in his house, this house, seeking it, giving Link his wallet, giving Link almost everything he owned, and said that he wants this house because he fears the 3-day coming to the end, was amazing. The pirate fisherman who was in the middle of the Great Bay Coast, opening his challenges up, even though the world was about to end in 3 days. That guy confused me. The beavers kept racing. They confused me. The Zoras were like, oh, if it's gonna come, it's gonna come. Fuck it, let's practice our band playing. They were hoping to play Clock Down, even though the world was coming to an end. That tells you a lot about the race. The Gorons were secluded in their mountain village, and they were the same way. They were like, well, if it comes, it comes. And in the swamps, same thing. A lot of people are like, well, if the end comes, the end comes. What can we do? The Deku Palace continued the tradition. They didn't care. But Ikana Valley and Ikana Canyon was really sad because there was no community up there. Everybody was dead. It was the Garo versus the Ikana Kingdom. And the Garu were the spies on the Ikana Kingdom. And Ikana Kingdom, all they wanted was to defend themselves against an invading enemy, the spies of the nation. And it was really sad to see that the Garo never made any progress, and the Ikana Kingdom never made any progress as much either, but they died. And all those soldiers that died, even in the afterlife, they've remained loyal to their nation, not because of their leaders, but because of the love of the people, love of the homeland, love of the kingdom. And they always feared the Stone Tower Temple. And everything that they've built, they left behind, just like today. Everything that Rome built, they left behind. Everything Greece built, they left behind. But they love their people, but at the same time, they were kind of fucked up. But everything that we do for our people. And I think that Ikana Kingdom perfectly reflects that. It reflects a soldier. It reflects a politician. It reflects a citizen. It reflects every one of us in our own way. And the entire Majora's Mask did that. When you learn about the 3 captains and the king that died in his throne room, and he had light never shining around his room again, he said one thing that I would always remember, which is forgiving your friends and embracing that belief by forgiving failure, that these feelings have vanished from our heart. Yes, they have vanished from our heart. They have vanished from a lot of people's hearts. People are unable to forgive as they used to. Today, there's no wars. There's no, all these things that used to happen in the past. There's no night ages as it used to be. There's no this, no that. And yet we are still unforgiving. We are in this new age where things can go easier for us, and yet we cannot take a lesson from anywhere, not even a game, it seems. And people started to take games, they started to take all these things, other things seriously, which I don't think you really should. Why would you take, I mean, Majora's Mask, I took it seriously, but I didn't take it to the point that a religious belief where I will shove it down your throat and say, this is right, even though is it right? For me, it was about the forgiving friends part. But what with the magic and everything, sorry, that doesn't exist in our world. But Ikana Canyon, just like Ikana Valley and everything else related to it, it had its own after story. And even after you're done all the stories, if you didn't seek out the fairies like I did, you would have to go back and you would have to get all the fairies, get all these extra gifts, the Great Fairy Sword. And I thought to myself, okay, now I've completed all 4 parts of the world. 4 parts. There is no absolute fucking way this game can get me entertained anymore. I completed 4 parts of the world. I'm going back to Clocktown. I'm going to go face Skull Kid. I'm going to kick his ass. I got all the 4 giants at my side. I wait for the final day. I'm waiting for the moon again. I'm hearing those fucking bells, and that's what stayed with me forever, the bells. Because on every final day, even when you were helping Cafe get back with Anu, and all these beautiful side quests that you had, you always were haunted by that bell. It was always reminding you, you have 3 days until the moon falls. And once the final hour reaches, the moon's going to descend down from the sky and crush the earth. I even stayed waiting for the end of the day once just to see what would happen if I don't do it. And after I saw the disastrous results of what happened as a kid, I was so disappointed and I was so sad that I reset my Nintendo and said, nope, I'm not gonna let this happen. Even though my 3-day cycle was reset, even when I reset Nintendo, I still didn't believe that this was the end, and I said, I'm gonna complete this game and I'm gonna let that fucking moon fall, right? And so the final day happens, the clock tower opens, I go up, I face Skull Kid, I play the Elegy to Optimus, and these 4 fucking giants come and they hold the moon and stop it. And these fairies are celebrating, but I'm like, but the moon's right above you still. That moon's just not going to go anywhere. Why are the giants going to be there for eternity, holding the moon up? And then the Majora's moon comes to life. Then the Skull Kid is not the real villain, but it's Majora himself. And Majora leaves the body of Skull Kid there, and you're like, this is dark, bro. And then you go into the moon, and you realize that your adventure as a kid is really funny because Majora is a kid. Well, sorry, not Majora. Well, maybe Majora is a kid. I'm not sure. But you always speculated what Majora was. But the Skull Kid was a kid, and you were facing Skull Kid. Now you're learning that the true evil is someone who does not care for about the mind of a child. But you're still a child facing, Majora. And you go up in the moon, and you encounter all these kids, and you're like, first thing you ask is, why do they all look like the Happy Mask salesman? Okay. Majora, you're weird. But anyway, you go to these people and they realize they all carry the masks of the bosses you defeated. And they all ask you to play with them, which is kind of weird. But at the same time, you gotta understand, Majora, I believe, just like Skull Kid, is a kid. They're all kids. And what you're facing are these children. And I believe that Majora was, well, my belief back then and still now is that Majora is just a little kid. And Majora just didn't like the world what it was turning into, that everything had rules. And I think the main reason that Majora wanted to see the world gone was because he didn't want to be bound by these rules. And he had enough of everything growing into a society that was hell-bent on controlling things. And so he decided the world's going to go to end in 3 days flat. 3 days. And there's a manga about the Majora and how it came to be, but I still don't believe that was a real story. I believe that was more like rushed in it, if anything. And then you go and see the moon field, and you see all these children, you see all these extra stages. You're like, fuck, this game is not over yet. But the thing is, the beauty about the ending was they didn't rush you. They didn't give you a specific time that you got to be finished these last 4 stages. But they did tell you, though, that you have to give all your masks. And if you didn't have a single mask in inventory, you were fucked. But I made sure I collect every single mask before I went on the dawn of the final day. Because I wanted Well, I was a completionist, and I was obsessed with completing everything in the game, honestly. And so when I got to the moon, I was so happy that these masks that you think are just side quests, that they're not really important, end up being important. Everything in your inventory, every single item you had was important. The bomber's notebook, everything that you completed was related, was a requirement. Everything you had in your inventory was a requirement. While today, half of it, it's required. The other half, that's how it felt. Everything was required. Now it's half of it. Half of it is required. I believe that you're not a true hero unless your whole being is required. That's how it was for me back then. I believed heroes were measured by the strength of the merit, the courage, and everything that they fucking gave in. And when I was happy that I can give the mask, and then he gave me the fierce deity mask, I was like, well, okay, this is a cool mask. I don't know what it does yet, but I'm gonna try. And I wore it, and as soon as I turned into fierce deity, I was like, my brother, who was nostalgic. Someone in the background interrupted, but anyway, what was that? Oh yeah, fierce deity. Fierce deity. My brother was so nostalgic that because he played the old Legend of Zelda, and he had Link, in those little Game Boy games and everything, transform into fierce deity. But we never saw him in 3D ever. We never saw him like a big giant guy. And when I finally transformed into fierce deity, the second form of Link, I was kind of disappointed. I honestly thought that because the way you move and the way you swing your sword with fierce deity was so easy that you defeated Majora's all three forms in an instant. But at the same time, you were happy. Finally, I'm gonna get this fucking shit done. I want to kill this motherfucker. And later on, I came back to challenge Majora on one-to-one combat as regular Link, and I liked the regular Link challenge the most. I wish they gave you a fierce deity mask as an additional reward at the end. But honestly, when the fuck would you use it if you got it as an additional reward at the end? Because the game was already done. Where would you honestly use it? Later on I came and beat the shit out of all those bosses. Maybe then, like when you go back to a doll and beat the shit out of them. But no, I believe that the mask was given at an appropriate and right time, so I can't really argue with when was it given to you and how it was given to you. But the Link versus Majora's Mask felt more of a real fight because you had to put effort in the fight rather than transforming to a fierce deity was like, oh, slashing through and done. But when Majora was defeated, and the way he was behaving, the way he moved those lashes around, the way his voice was, I honestly was always convinced he was a kid, just like I was. And defeating this kid, this bully, and sending him into his damnation, to his end, was a joyful experience. When I heard that his spirit left the mask afterwards, after he faded away into the moon, his body going to millions of pieces and dissolving, and everything was the end, and the moon leaves the planet and goes back to its own little orbit, and the citizens of Clocktown are cheering, that's the one thing. The citizens of Clocktown on the final day, a carpenter was facing the moon bravely, and he was like, yeah, I don't care. I'll stay until the end. You guys run. And then later on, he's in front of the city, fucking looking at the moon from afar. He's like, well, it's going to fall. Actually, it's going to fall. Oh, wow, it just disappeared. Aha, I was still right. And no, he wasn't right. He was a fucking chicken, just like the rest of them. The guards fled the city. The mayor gave the permission, if you want to flee the city in the cafe quest, which I thought was really awesome. Anu united with Cafe, which is a lovely, lovely love story. The town was shut down. Everybody was leaving the town, abandoning the town. The carpenters fled the town, not finishing their work. They abandoned the lead carpenter. The guy in the curiosity shop was still working until the dawn. He didn't give a shit if the world was coming to an end. The banker was still there, working until the end of the final day. And the swordsman was in the back, cowering in fear after he was pretending he was so brave. The postman, wanted to retreat from the city, but he was so loyal to the schedule. He was so loyal to everyone in the town. And it's kind of weird that he was that loyal, but there's that loyal people in this world too. The people in the milk bar stayed until the final end of the day. The circus troupe fled the city as well. And seeing all those people come back in the end for the festival, restoring everything back to normal. The swamp, the races of the Gorons, the races that Gorons have for the gold dust, to restore back their markets, to restore back the Great Bay Coast, to see the Gerudo getting their asses handed to them, even though, at the same time, they also return to the life of formality. And Ikana Canyon still remaining somewhat cursed, but Pamela and her father can finally enjoy the dawn of the new day. You kind of see that in Link too, because he finally leaves and he goes back to the Hyrule, I believe. He goes back to the Zelda and everybody else. And I was really sad to see the story honestly end there, because I didn't want him to leave Majora's world. And some people are telling me Majora's Mask world is not real, it's all Link's head, and there was so many speculations about this. But I'm like, no, I believe that he just came from Hyrule and he just landed in Termina, and that's where I like to leave it. I don't think it was a dream, honestly. I think that hero was the true hero of both Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, and when he died, he had some regret. But his heroic actions, no doubt, brought that regret as much as they brought him joy that he saved all these people in his life. That Link was one of the most relatable Links that I have ever encountered and been with. And it was a character that I was sad to see to go, and that I would never see this continuation happen again. I mean, sure, he continued through other forms, like Reborn and Rebirth and all this time. But it was the final Link that I would love, because back then those times weren't as feminist. They weren't as, gay oriented. They didn't force things down your throat. They just carried you through a simple fairy tale story, and they didn't tax much of your time. They rewarded you for your progression. They rewarded you as you went through the game, and a lot of people I spoke to today also can say the same thing. This game was as much as rewarding, was much as influential, was much more story than it was game itself, and it was overall just the best experience you could ever have. It didn't have difficult control systems. It only had 4 buttons, honestly, and it had a shield, maybe 5 buttons. Depends on how good of a player you were back then. Maybe 6 if you can include the B or A button on your joystick. It doesn't matter. It had a wonderful story. It introduced you to Skull Kid, introduced you to how the way he paints, how he behaves like a kid, how he hangs out with his fairies, and you could just relate to it on so many levels. And the most touching thing in The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask that I gotta give it the best score, 5 out of 5, is the music, the melodies, the Song of Healing, the Goron Lullaby, the Sonata of Awakening. A lot of those I can still remember today. In my head, I could play the instruments to you, but if I played them right now to you, I would totally fail in every degree. But I miss the way they made the old games, especially Majora's Mask, and that's why I made the video that got 1.1 million views of the moon in 6 minutes, and because I realized in the way that a lot of people can relate to the end of the world. A lot of people would say, yeah, I wouldn't be afraid, I'd face this moon, and I look at it with fuck, who cares, the world is coming, I'd be the hero saving them all. And honestly, fucking, the COVID season just happened. Do you see how people are behaving? They're wearing their fucking masks. They're all secluded from one another. None of them are a helpful hand. They're more racist than ever. They're beating up people, black people, white people. Doesn't matter who the fuck they're beating up. But they're saying, racism, that's where we gotta beat you up. And they're spreading the virus to themselves. Could you imagine if you put them in the Majora's Mask world? They would be 10 times worse to each other, right? They would be cowards. They wouldn't be like the people in Majora's Mask would be. I mean, the people in Majora's Mask at least had the dignity to admit, well, we're fucked. It's none of our fault, but okay, see you later. At least they didn't hurt anybody. Well, we humanity ourselves right now in our own world hurt each other. And if the moon was falling right down right now in 3 days flats, I would totally be all for it. I would totally say, please bomb us. We don't deserve it. But at the same time, I can't say that for all the newborn. I can't say that for all the good people that took their lives, gave their lives for us, who helped make the world a better place. And The Legend of Zelda will always be remembered by me and by others, because you could relate to it so much, but at the same time, you can ask so many questions. You had so much speculation left, even at the end of the video game. You didn't want it to end. And at the same time, you were thankful for making you think about the end of the world aspect. What would happen if the end of the world would come? How afraid would you be at the dawn of the final day? How would you behave at the dawn of the final day? How would your parents behave? How would your family members? How would this affect the world? How would this affect you? And knowing that you could put an end to it and put the spirit of the evil mask that finally has gone away, you kind of realize that the evil spirit of that mask is probably the evil spirit of mankind, and that causes this evil to be born in the first place. And again, thank you for the 1.1 million subscribers. I hope you enjoyed the 45 of subscribers. 1.1 million views, not subscribers. Blah, I wish I had one fucking 1. But anyway, thank you for the 1.1 million views for the Legend of Zelda and Majora's Mask. I hope this video was somewhat entertaining. A lot of my videos I posted in the past, I will admit half of them are stupid because, as I said, I really didn't really care. But at the same time, I was drawn into politics. I entered a little state of my depression. And I know most people say, don't tell other people you had depression of this, but I did. You know, a lot of people have depression nowadays, so out of nothing. And thank you very much for watching my video. That's it. I hope you like it. I don't really know what to say anymore else, you know, except for, yeah, it's a Croatian flag, and that's Isis, the goddess Isis. And if you want, at the end of the video, or whenever you want, if anybody comments, I can show you more about how to do hieroglyphic translations. Yeah, in ancient Egypt, eh? And that's about it. Have a good day, guys.